Eleanor, we've decided to go in a younger direction. That's all they said after 28 years. No warning, no thank you. Just a closed-door meeting, an HR rep with rehearsed sympathy, and a folder labeled exit packet. I wasn't even allowed to say goodbye to my team. As I walked out, box in hand badge, surrendered my replacement, a 20-something, with a TikTok resume, slid right into my office. I had trained 3 CFOs, held the company together through 2 recessions, built the predictive analytics software that saved them millions. But suddenly, I was outdated. My name erased from every report. My login disabled mid-sentence. And the worst part, they celebrated. Champagne in the break room. Toasts about leaner, fresher leadership. I stood there, in the parking lot, watching through glass walls as they laughed over my legacy. Why would a company toss away its most loyal architect? What were they afraid of? This story will make you angry. It will lift you. And it just might surprise you with its unexpected ending. Before we delve into the details, grab a cup of tea. Turn up the volume, and don't forget to comment. Let us know where in the world you are, and what time it is in your local area. We want to know just how far these stories go. As I stepped into the elevator, still clutching the cardboard box that held the last pieces of my career, I caught a glimpse of the glass-walled conference room. Inside, the executive team was already popping champagne. Marla from marketing raised a toast while Jacob, the newly appointed director, and my former junior laughed loud enough to echo down the corridor. I froze. Just for a second. I wasn't supposed to see that. But they didn't care. They hadn't even bothered to close the blinds. The email announcing my retirement had gone out company-wide within minutes of my exit. It spoke of honoring her years of service in a paragraph so vague it could have been written for a houseplant. No name, no mention of my contributions, just corporate politeness, wrapped in cold, empty jargon. Back in my office, or what used to be mine, my nameplate was already gone. My replacement, a bright young woman named Alyssa, gave me an awkward little wave as she slid into my chair. She was kind. This wasn't her fault. But the look in her eyes said it all. You're no longer one of us. The team I had built, mentored, fought for, none of them said a word. Not because they didn't care, but because in a culture like this, speaking up for someone like me meant risking your own seat. That's how it works in places that worship youth and agility, but forget the hands that built the foundation. That evening at home, I found a LinkedIn post by the CEO himself. He was praising bold, innovative leadership transitions. The photo, he was shaking hands with Jacob under a banner that read, "Future forward, leaner, faster, younger." I stared at the screen. Not out of sadness, but out of something colder. A recognition. They didn't just let me go. They wiped me away. My name, my work, my legacy all folded neatly into a narrative that made them look visionary. But what they didn't know, I had copies. I had notes. I had more than just memories. I had the architecture they were still building on. So while they toasted my absence, I opened an old folder on my desktop, one they thought didn't exist, and began to read. Not to look back, but to plan forward. Because if they thought Eleanor Matthews was finished, they hadn't read the final chapter. And that chapter was about to begin. The following Monday, I woke up at 6:30 a.m., out of habit. No alarm, no rush, just years of routine, embedded deep in my bones. I brewed a cup of coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and opened my laptop. Curiosity pulled me back to the company's internal dashboard. Still accessible, thanks to a forgotten admin pathway I'd built years ago. They hadn't even thought to revoke it. And there it was. The quarterly innovation report. The one I used to compile. The one I used to present. Now it had a new name on it, Jacob Langston. And listed right there as the firm's latest advancement was my predictive analytics module. Rebranded under some shiny, ambiguous title, like IntelliTrack. No footnote. No acknowledgement. Nothing. Every single algorithm, function, risk assessment parameter. They were mine. I wrote them, tested them, protected them for years. Now they were being paraded as the breakthrough of a team I was no longer part of. But it didn't stop there. An email thread surfaced forwarded by a sympathetic former colleague. A marketing campaign was underway. They were positioning IntelliTrack as the CEO's bold new vision. They planned a press tour, a feature article. And guess who'd be quoted, of course? Jacob. We've finally unlocked AI-driven forecasting that outperforms legacy systems. Legacy systems. That was me. It felt like watching someone move into your childhood home, repaint the walls, and call it their masterpiece. But as I scrolled through the version logs, I noticed something. Something they hadn't touched yet. Buried in the architecture was a dormant subroutine. A safeguard I'd written years ago in case of unauthorized replication. Not malicious. Just illuminating. If activated, it would timestamp the original development lineage, with my name embedded deep in the core. I had built the system to be honest, to be transparent. Everything they weren't, and now, the question wasn't if I'd use it. It was how. I closed the laptop slowly and stared out the window. They had stripped my title, erased my credit, and patted themselves on the back while doing it. But they forgot one thing. I didn't just write the code. I was the code, and that meant the next move was mine. Edited transcript, part 4 to 10. That afternoon, I found myself in the attic. Not for nostalgia, but for something practical. I remembered a box I hadn't opened in years. It sat behind an old trunk beneath layers of dust and insulation. Inside, labeled folders, USB drives, and a black moleskin notebook. The kind I used back when coding felt like art, not a survival tactic. I brushed off the cover, opened it slowly. Pages and pages of handwritten notes, flowcharts, diagrams, logic trees. It was the birth certificate of the system now branded under someone else's name. Each annotation carried my handwriting, my thinking process, my long nights. I could still smell the faint coffee stains on the corners from the countless evenings I spent alone at my desk, while everyone else had already gone home. Then one drive caught my attention. A silver thumb drive taped shut. The label in my handwriting, IntelliTrack Gen 0 Offsite. I had forgotten all about it. I plugged it into my laptop, watched it light up, almost like it knew it was being called back to duty. Inside was the original build. Pre-optimization, pre-polish, but functional. More than that, it was pure. Clean architecture, efficient logic, mine. Next to the build file was a subfolder titled Failsafe, my countermeasure. A routine that when executed would reveal every original timestamp author signature and system lineage, unmistakably tied to me. This wasn't an accident. Years ago, during an internal audit, Panic Legal had requested a version history archive. I built one for off-site storage in case of breach or loss. They signed off, then forgot. But I didn't. They could erase my name from internal slideshows, cut me out of credits and marketing reels. But this was deeper. This was embedded in the code. And if I released it, no executive quote, no rebranded chart, would undo what it would prove. I sat back, notebook and hand drive glowing on the desk. They thought I was just a forgotten name on a locked door. But the foundation of everything they'd built still whispered my signature. And I'd just found the volume knob. Now I just needed the right moment to turn it up. 2 days later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to pick up. Eleanor Matthews. A deep voice. This is Ryan Kessler, CTO of Stratacore. Stratacore. The competitor our execs used to mock in meetings, undisciplined dreamers, they called them. Yet here he was, calling me, directly. I heard what happened, he said, not asking, just stating. And I also heard IntelliTrack looks suspiciously like something I saw you demo 10 years ago in a closed industry roundtable. I said nothing. He continued. We've been building something adjacent. But honestly, your logic tree was years ahead, and now it's being paraded around like fresh innovation. There was no bitterness in his tone, only curiosity, and maybe a touch of admiration. We'd like to bring you in, he said, under your terms. Not to burn down your old company, but to build something better. Your name, your team, your way. I paused. A dozen thoughts raced through my head. Revenge wasn't my language. But justice was. I didn't want headlines, didn't want lawsuits. I wanted a legacy and control. I don't want to be a figurehead, I said. I want engineering autonomy, full IP ownership, and freedom to hire. You'll have it, he replied almost without hesitation. We met 2 days later. Quiet cafe, no suits, no contracts, just 2 engineers who understood the value of what couldn't be faked. I laid out the vision, a platform that didn't just predict risk, but understood its shape over time. Something cleaner, more innovative, faster. A system designed with logic and empathy, 2 things my former bosses never cared to balance. He nodded. We'll call it Horizon? No, I said, smiling. We'll let the system name itself. It's more honest that way. And just like that, the first lines of real code began, not in a corporate lab, but on the back of a napkin, with a borrowed pen, and a tired heart, slowly refilling. They'd thrown me out to make space for younger voices. Ironically, it took an older one to start the conversation that would truly matter. Now all that was left was to let them hear it. We didn't need glossy pitch decks, no press releases. What we had was clarity. At Stratacore, I wasn't a relic. I was a builder again. Ryan gave me full latitude to design the architecture from scratch, and within 2 weeks I had assembled a small, carefully chosen team. Not for youth, not for credentials, but for curiosity. A pair of recent graduates, one former academic, and Ruth, a brilliant systems engineer who had quietly left my old company after being passed over twice. They called me Dr. M at first out of respect, but I waved it off. We're builders, first names only. Titles don't write code. What we built wasn't flashy, but it was elegant. The platform learned not just from data, but from mistakes. It identified patterns of systemic risk in the way a seasoned analyst would, cautiously, contextually. We didn't just improve what I had done before. We made it brighter, leaner, faster. But there was something else too, something subtle. The subroutine I had once buried, the one designed to track authorship lineage, was now at the core of the system. Except this time it wasn't hidden. It was a feature, a declaration. Every contributor's work was logged, attributed, credited, in real time. No one would be erased here. Not again. Late one night I walked into our war room, whiteboards covered cables everywhere, half-drunk coffee cups lining the tables. I saw the team huddled laughing over a bug that had turned a financial forecast into a dinosaur emoji. And it hit me. This wasn't about payback. Yes, this was about legacy. But also something purer. Building something where credit wasn't a battlefield, where age wasn't a liability, and where no one needed to fight just to be seen. By week 5, we had a working prototype. Ryan looked over the dashboard and whistled. This doesn't just compete, he said. This rewrites the rules. But I already knew that, because the rules. They were never written for people like me. We were just expected to follow them. Not this time. As we prepared to quietly release the demo to a few key players, including one company that would recognize the interface immediately, I felt a calm settle in. They wouldn't know it was me. Not yet. But they were about to feel it. 3 weeks after our prototype quietly launched, the first ripple arrived, then the shockwave. A longtime Fortune 100 client of my former company requested a demo after hearing whispers about a new forecasting platform that outperformed IntelliTrack. Stratacore scheduled the meeting under a temporary project name. No prominent branding, no big reveal, just code. Midway through the demo, the client's lead analyst froze. This predictive loop, he said, eyes narrowing. It's familiar. Exceptionally familiar. I said nothing. Ryan, perfectly calm, nodded. It's based on a proprietary engine developed independently with full audit lineage available upon request. That same afternoon, I got a screenshot from a friend still inside my old company. It was a photo of their emergency executive meeting agenda. Urgent external platform displacing key clients. Source unknown. Email chains lit up. Jacob, the man who'd inherited my title, was reportedly blaming marketing leaks. The CEO demanding a full IP analysis on legacy systems. They couldn't figure it out. How did this anonymous platform understand their architecture? Better than they did. But I knew why. They hadn't built it. I had. Meanwhile, customer inquiries spiked. Requests came in from 3 former clients who had walked away from my old firm years ago, tired of the corporate fluff. No soul, no substance. They remembered the integrity, the precision, the early years, before everything became PowerPoint decks and buzzwords. Word spread fast in the industry. The platform didn't just outperform IntelliTrack, it made it look like a first draft. Inside the boardroom, tensions boiled over. Executives pointed fingers. Marketing blamed engineering. Jacob claimed he was misled about the system's origins. The same man who once waved me off in a meeting with "Let's keep the tech talk simple, Eleanor," was now sweating over something he couldn't explain. Then came the first press request. A trade magazine wanted to feature the mysterious platform shaking up enterprise analytics. We didn't respond. Because the goal wasn't the spotlight. It was the tremor. As their stock dipped for the first time in 8 quarters, and a whisper campaign about lost innovation began to circulate, I watched, from a quiet cafe across the street from my old building. They still didn't know it was me. But they would. Soon. The knock came just after 7 a.m. Sharp, deliberate. I knew that rhythm. Only one man had ever knocked like he owned the door to my life, James Braddock, CEO of my former company. I didn't open it right away, let him wait. I poured coffee, took a sip, let the silence stretch. When I finally opened the door, there he was. Tailored navy suit, the same one he wore in every magazine spread about visionary leadership. But this time the collar was loose, and the gleam of certainty in his eyes was gone. "Eleanor," he said, voice rehearsed, but shaky. "We should talk." I stepped aside, not out of politeness, but to watch him walk into a space I now owned, unlike the office he'd once ordered me to vacate. He sat stiffly, hands folded. There's been some confusion about the new platform, and who's behind it. Clients are asking questions, investors too. And I asked. "We're hoping to collaborate," he said. "We believe there's still an opportunity for you to come back." A pause. "We can craft a story. Perhaps you've been consulting all along. We'll restore your title. Even offer equity." Quietly, of course. I smiled, not cruelly. Just enough to let him feel the weight of the irony. "Now I'm legacy enough to headline your comeback?" He didn't respond. I walked over to the table and slid a folder toward him. Inside the terms I'd prepared the night before. Just in case. A public acknowledgement of authorship. A formal apology for age-based restructuring. And a full audit of how my intellectual property had been repackaged. He scanned the first page. Paled. "You expect us to admit wrongdoing that could tank our valuation?" I leaned in. "Or, you can watch it tank on its own. Your choice." He didn't argue. As he left, I watched him descend my front steps slowly. Phone already in hand. No doubt dialing legal. He'd thought this would be a negotiation, but I wasn't here to bargain. I was here to remind them of the cost of erasing a name. without understanding what that name stood for. The only question now was, how loud would the reckoning have to be before they listened? That part was still unfolding. The following morning, I found myself seated in a conference room I hadn't stepped into in almost a year. But this time, the air was different. This time, I wasn't here to ask for anything. I was here to rewrite the terms. Across from me sat James. His legal team flanked him. A quiet panic pulsed beneath their carefully neutral expressions. On my side, Ryan, my counsel, and a folder of signed letters from 3 former Fortune 100 clients who had already moved to our new platform. The message was clear: we didn't need them, but they might still need me. I handed over the terms again, this time slowly. A public apology, acknowledgement of original authorship, implementation of an age equity policy reviewed annually, a written commitment to protect intellectual contributions regardless of tenure. James leaned back, arms crossed. "This will set a precedent," he muttered. "That's the point," I said. He glanced toward his advisors. "We'll need time to know," I cut in. "You had time. You used it to erase people like me. Now you'll use it to protect them." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the general counsel reached forward, picked up a pen, and signed the first page. The room exhaled. I stood, nodded once. Don't think of this as defeat. Think of it as overdue maintenance on a system that should have never been built without safeguards. Outside, the lobby hadn't changed much. Still marble floors, LED panels broadcasting empty slogans. But as I passed the young receptionist, she smiled at me. Not with pity, but with recognition. "Welcome back, Dr. Matthews," she said softly. I didn't correct her. Not because I was returning, but because maybe now, no one else would have to leave just to be seen. Back at Stratacore, Ryan was already fielding new partnership inquiries. The platform we'd built was becoming a benchmark, not just for performance, but for ethics, transparency logs, credit lineage, shared ownership. This was the legacy I wanted. Not a corner office, not a plaque, but a culture where no one was invisible after 50. As I watched the sun set over our new headquarters, I smiled. We hadn't just launched software. We'd launched a new standard, and the industry was about to feel every line of it. Weeks passed, but something had shifted. The silence that once followed my name in industry circles was now replaced by quiet reverence. Not because I'd made noise, but because I didn't have to. The impact spoke louder. Stratacore's platform was now considered best in class, not just for performance, but for how it was built. Transparent credit tracking, ethical design protocols, a clear lineage of authorship, one that honored every voice regardless of age or background. The very safeguards once dismissed as unnecessary overhead were now being adopted across the sector as the new gold standard. And the irony, my former company had published its public apology. It ran quietly, tucked into a corner of a business journal, framed as a renewed commitment to honoring legacy contributors. They never used my name, of course, but they didn't have to. Everyone knew. One morning, I received a handwritten letter from a young engineer at another firm. She wrote, "I used to think turning 50 meant I had 5 years left in tech. Now I know that's just when the real work starts. Thank you for reminding us that wisdom isn't invisible." I folded the note gently, tucked it beside my old moleskin notebook, the one that started all of this. That afternoon, I led a roundtable with a dozen mid-career women in tech. Many of them had been passed over, talked down to, told they were too experienced for junior hires to relate to. We didn't talk about revenge or lawsuits. We talked about building systems that remembered who built them, and for the first time, I felt it. This wasn't just my redemption, it was a correction for all of us. This wasn't the loud kind of justice. Not headlines, not courtrooms. It was quiet. It was lasting. And it was finally mine. So if you've ever been told you're too old, too quiet, too outdated to matter. Remember this. Sometimes the code they erased is the same code they still rely on to function. You don't need to shout to shake the system. Just wait and build. And then let the results speak for themselves. Subscribe to catch more inspiring stories, because the next one it might just be yours.